Hello and welcome to Inside the Americas. Coming up on the show this week. At least 8 people killed in 3 separate shootings around the city of Atlanta. 6 of the victims are of Asian descent, and hate crimes targeting the community have spiked in recent weeks. Deb Haaland becomes the first Native American cabinet secretary in U.S. history, the politician from New Mexico taking the helm of the agency that oversees Native affairs. And hospitals in Brazil under pressure as the coronavirus pandemic spirals out of control. The country registered its highest daily death toll this week. But first, at least 8 people have been killed in shootings around the city of Atlanta. The attacks taking place at 3 different spas in the state of Georgia. 6 of the victims are of Asian descent. Now, Asian Americans have been on edge in the United States following a recent spate of hate crimes targeting the community.
Attacked in the streets and robbed in their shops. During the past year's global pandemic, the US has seen a spike in anti-Asian racism.
Vicious hate crimes against Asian Americans. They're forced to live in fear for their lives just walking down streets in America. It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop.
A very different stance to President Biden's predecessor, Donald Trump, who frequently referred to the Chinese virus, coming under fire for what some saw as fueling racism. As soon as he took office, Joe Biden signed an executive order aimed at addressing rising anti-Asian abuse. Some states, such as California and New York, have made funds available to target these hate crimes. In the 16 largest U.S. cities, attacks on Asian residents have almost tripled over the past year.
We've heard some heartbreaking stories from young people in our community who experienced bullying or comments at school, or lots of folks early on in the pandemic especially experiencing people distancing or not wanting to be anywhere near them on public transportation or in public spaces.
Meanwhile, some Asian Americans are taking matters into their own hands. Following a wave of attacks and robberies in his community, Jimmy Bunfenzi set up a volunteer patrol in Oakland's Chinatown neighborhood.
I decided one day after work I'm gonna come out here, patrol by myself, and if I could save one person, I'm happy, then that's what I did. And my message went out there, sent to everybody else who volunteered with me.
Groups monitoring anti-Asian racism have recorded more than 3,000 such incidents in the US over the past year.
2 months after he was sworn into office, U.S. President Joe Biden has a message for migrants: don't come. The statement comes following a surge of unaccompanied migrant children at the southern border. Over 4,000 minors are in custody, and officials say they are on track to encounter more individuals on the southwest border than they have in the past 20 years. James Vecina reports.
With record numbers of migrants trying to cross into the United States and children's shelters overflowing, it's being called the Biden border crisis. On a visit to the border town of El Paso, Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was quick to blame the new president's policies.
This is a human heartbreak. The sad part about all of this, it didn't have to happen. This crisis is created by the presidential policies of this new administration.
Joe Biden has scrapped a number of Donald Trump's strict immigration policies and stopped construction on the border wall. Unaccompanied minors are now allowed to pursue asylum claims. But officials arrested around 100,000 people illegally crossing the southern border last month, a 28% jump from January. Among them are 9,500 unaccompanied children, and shelter capacity has been exceeded. The White House is pointing to the ongoing violence, poverty and natural disasters in Central America and blames years of Trump policies for the crisis.
We want to expedite getting these kids out of these CBP facilities as quickly as possible. And that's our goal and our objective, and into shelters as quickly as possible, then into sponsored homes while their cases are being considered and adjudicated. We're trying to work through what was a dismantled and unprepared system because of the role of the last administration.
On the other side of the border, Mexican authorities, who've welcomed Biden's pledge to tackle the root causes of migration, have stepped up raids, concerned the new policies could bring a heavier burden on Mexico. Joe Biden's now seeking to create a way to citizenship for 11 million people living illegally in the United States. Congress is considering 2 immigration bills this week.
Our image of the week next is of Deb Haaland, who's become the first Native American cabinet secretary in U.S. history. The politician from New Mexico taking the helm of the agency that oversees Native affairs. One Democratic lawmaker said Haaland leading the Department of the Interior is history coming full circle.
The yeas are 51, the nays are 40. The nomination is confirmed.
With the bang of a gavel, history was made. Deb Haaland is set to join US President Joe Biden's workforce as Secretary of the Interior, making her the first Native American to lead the department.
Yes, I'm a woman of color. That seems to be who we need in office right now to really push the issues that we care about.
It's not the first time Haaland has made history. In 2018, she was one of the first 2 Native American women ever elected to Congress. A member of the Laguna Pueblo Nation in New Mexico, Haaland will be in charge of managing 500 million acres of public lands, which includes many national parks and tribal reservations. She's set to be a voice for the country's 1.9 million indigenous people, whose ties with the US government have been strained for generations following historic abuse of Native Americans for hundreds of years.
It's a sigh of relief. There are many tears of joy. But the truth is that we're also very realistic about the work ahead. She will need tribal leaders, Native community leaders to lean in to the new possibilities of having a say-so.
Haaland backs Biden's climate policies. She has vowed to reduce oil and gas drilling on federal land. Republican lawmakers have criticized her for her radical climate agenda. They say her plans could cost American jobs.
People in Bolivia have been taken to the streets to protest the arrests of former President Janine Áñez and other political opponents. This over allegations they were involved in a coup in 2019 to oust long-term leader Evo Morales. The party of Morales is back in power after resigning in late 2019 amid protests against his government. To our number of the week next, and it's 2,841. That's the highest daily death toll Brazil has registered since the coronavirus pandemic began. Hospitals in the country are running out of capacity, and the president's handling of the pandemic has come under heavy criticism.
Behind the doors of the resuscitation centre at São Paulo's University Hospital, it's a sad routine for the head of department, Flávia Machado. Is it a quieter day today?
There's not a single calm day. All of our patients are in serious condition. We've never been in a situation like this.
She supervises 3 intensive care units here. All 45 beds are occupied. In this room, the patients who arrive are getting younger and younger, like Alexander, who has no medical history. He's been under respiratory assistance for 3 whole days.
He's a strong patient with no medical history going to the gym. So one wonders, where is this disease going to end?
A victim of the new Brazilian variant, more contagious, and which has sparked a massacre up and down the entire country. 2 people every minute die in Brazil as a result of COVID-19. These doctors, who are not ones to talk politics, have reached the end of the line.
A president who does not wear a mask is unacceptable. The use of masks is compulsory, and this should have been imposed by the authorities at the very start of the pandemic, and we should have ordered vaccines earlier. We should have had a better plan.
All the specialists screen each patient one by one, like this woman, who they thought had recovered a few days ago and who relapsed.
I didn't believe in the pandemic at first. Last year when it began, I was working for a lady who had COVID-19 and took care of her for 48 days without catching it. I didn't believe many people would die. I said, I will never catch it. And I got it.
Patients are recovering more and more slowly. As many as 4,000 Brazilians are in a critical condition, hoping for a precious place in the country's healthcare system. An impossible equation, for this head of department.
This is the first aid group giving us updates on which patients need beds. I asked if there was a spot elsewhere, and if they say yes, I'll go back there for information. WhatsApp helps us a lot. Without it, we couldn't coordinate.
If no social isolation measures are adopted at a national level, these doctors warn in coming weeks, Brazil could reach the grim daily toll of 4,000 deaths.
And finally, world-famous cellist Yo-Yo Ma turned his coronavirus vaccination center into a concert hall. Take a listen. Yo-Yo Ma said he wanted to give something back after receiving his second inoculation. The pop-up concert in Massachusetts came a year after Yo-Yo Ma started posting recordings of himself using the hashtag Songs of Comfort on social media. That's it for this edition of Inside the Americas. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.
Sidi Bouzid, Tunisia, December 2010. A young fruit seller sets himself on fire. He feels ignored and abandoned by the government. His death stirs nationwide protests for democracy. It's the beginning of the Arab Spring.
We went out to protest against the regime. We didn't think we were making a revolution. But when the regime fell, we had dreams.
While Tunisians today enjoy freedom of expression, some are nostalgic for the dictatorship of President Ben Ali.
We had security, a health system, safety, and a bit of freedom.
Our reporters are in Sidi Bouzid, in a Tunisia caught between two stools. Have the achievements of the revolution met the dreams and expectations of the Tunisian people?
Sidi Bouzid Revisited, all this week here on France 24.